they said, come up and talk to us about the environment and whether it's relevant to the church. And I said, yeah, I think I'd be glad to do that. So anyway, I was younger and knew less, but I knew enough to know that those two should be connected. So that was the beginning of environmental discussion at YDS back then. So anyway, that gives you a sense of why I got involved and why I've stayed involved. And I've been at all the important junctures along the way. I mean, I think probably and also because of my environmental work, they asked me to join the leadership council at the School of Environment in 2001. So I've been on that board since then as well. But by 2000, I think it was like 2006, it was either 6 or 8, but we've gotten Mary Evelyn and John in, and we were excited about that at both places. At least those of us who saw the connection were excited about it. And what builders have they proven to be, and what advocates they've proven to be, and what wonderful people they are. So anyway, that's been great. But in 2008, I'd maybe it was 2006, but anyway, I'd convinced Gus Feth and Harry Attridge that we should have a joint meeting of the two councils, Environment and Divinity, to talk about our life together. And so anyway, we did that. They were shocked. And so anyway, we shocked that they approved it. We had it, and there were about 125, 150 people there for Saturday night dinner. And they had asked me to speak because they said, you're the one that understands this. We're not quite sure what we're doing. So, but anyway, I got up and I said, I go home, I'm chairman of the board of the largest park creator in America, park developer. And I've realized what we do is de minimis. I mean, it's wonderful work. And we've certainly greatly increased the platform since then, but and the impact. But I said it's just very limited. And I said TNC, largest one in the country, and it's now working on the world. But it's also in terms of land protected and conserved, it's hardly anything. And as a relative matter, I mean, I said back then I could look out of my office on the 46th floor in Atlanta. And I knew all the figures at that point for TNC in terms of acres saved and protected and all that kind of stuff. And I could look out my window and I could see more real estate value the mile out of my office in only one direction, not east, west, north, and south, but just one direction that was greater than what we were doing. So my first thought was, well, we got to get the real estate community on this. But the second thing was the church. Where are they? And so anyway, we had that dinner and it was very successful. They republished the talk, and it became, I think, Spectrum's leading requested magazine article they ever did. Because essentially I said, the environmental organizations can't do this by themselves. We need their science, we need their facts, we need their skills, but they need our spirit and they need our touch to people. And I looked at them and said, 85% of the people in the world believe in a God. Some of them have fairly mixed views about what that God is, but that's the way it is. So it's a spiritual draw. So I said, we've got to tap into that, because otherwise we're never going to get climate change to turn around. We've got to address it that way. So anyway, and I do remember after I finished, Gus was up on the platform with me, and he stood up, and people were generous with their enthusiasm for it. But when I turned around to walk to my seat, Gus embraced me in a big bear hug, and he whispered, he said, "Thank you, Chris. I now understand why we were doing this tonight." I said, well, Gus, tell me, I'm on the front lines on the environmental stuff. We need the army that's behind us with all of these churches, and they need to get into it because they can do so much themselves. So that's been a goal also throughout. And by 2008, we were moving, and then we were renovating the building. And by, I think I stepped down something like 2016, maybe as chairman, 2018. At that point, we had renovated the entire historical campus and had launched the Living Building. And the Living Building also came out of all my work in the environmental area, because what I was trying to do with the faith community, I was doing with real estate. So I was there when, through the Urban Land Institute, I was on their global board for 9 years, I think, but that's the leading commercial real estate group in probably the world. And anyway, I got them to move towards green. There were a lot of people who wanted to do it, they just didn't know how to express it. They still were thinking that killing the Clean Water Act was a good idea. We had discussions, and I think I convinced them that that was kind of, it was a fallacy thinking. And so anyway, they all of a sudden started talking about green resorts and green developments and green homes. And then we got into leads 1 and 2 and 3, and all of that was very successful. I worked with a lot of clients and a lot of friends that were doing leads work, convincing them that that was very important. They needed to do it. Great organization, great leadership, and all of that. And so anyway, that process, and I also was on the board with Amory Lovins at the Rocky Mountain Institute. And Amory had proven in 1972 by building his house in Aspen, Colorado, that you could build a house that didn't have an HVAC system out there with the incredible swings of temperature, that didn't have an HVAC system, but just by good engineering, good design, and deep thoughtfulness, that you could keep the temperature in that building at 72 degrees year round. So once I started finding out about the Living Building, which was early on, I knew that it could be done if we had the right people working on it. So anyway, that's
it's a
time to take a break after all that. So I don't know.
It's a great history, and I was there at that joint meeting because
You went to all, you were there. So you were leading it. Don't just say you were there in meetings. You were leading most of them.
no,
More so than I was.
Gus was kind enough to ask me to speak at that meeting, and it was a great beginning of a joint venture between the two schools, which is still ongoing.